Namaste. For today's reading, I'm going to read from my first book, My Journey Through Time, where I describe a life in 17th century Varanasi. It was a time around the time of the destruction of the great Kashi Vishwanath Temple, and there was a communal violence, and so my husband and I leave Varanasi and travel to the Himalayas, and eventually we come to Kashmir. I'll read from there. Since arriving, I had had the urge to walk into the forest behind the house, but there was no occasion to spend time alone. Now, free for a few hours, I could wander and fully take in the beauty of the pine trees. I was able to discern a narrow path, and so began my walk. The forest was quiet. Every now and then, I would stop to gaze up at the sun, which could barely be seen through although its light shimmered through the pines, and to breathe deeply the fragrant air which brought an inner tranquility. I had not walked far into the forest when I came to a small, rather broken-down hut. The door was bolted shut, but I decided to knock to see whether anyone was inside. There was no answer. I sat on a nearby stone for a while and then returned to our house. And we spent a quiet summer wandering through the neighboring mountains, visiting sacred sites and meeting interesting people. Whenever I could find time alone, I would walk into the forest and visit the bolted hut. I felt mysteriously drawn to the place. I'd always knock in the hope of finding someone home, but there was never a response. A man that my husband befriended in town told us that a long time ago a woman used to live in that forest hut, but people stayed away because there were reports of strange happenings. This sparked my interest even more. But my husband advised me against wandering into the forest alone. These walks had come to mean so much to me, and I could not refrain, but I agreed to go no further than the hut. On one of my walks into the forest, I came to the hut and found the door slightly ajar. I knocked, and when there was no response, I pushed the door open and peered inside. The hut was composed of a single room with only a small opening for a window. It was quiet and dark inside. As I entered and my eyes became accustomed to the dark, I saw a woman in the corner seated in meditation. Startled, I drew back. I didn't know whether to leave or to stay, so I simply stood by the door for a few minutes. I couldn't see her features very well, but she seemed somewhat older than me. She was dressed in Kashmiri clothes and had a shawl wrapped around her head. She didn't move or speak. Finally, I decided to leave, but as I stepped toward the door, I heard her voice. I turned to find her eyes half opened, as if she was slowly returning to the outer world. "You may stay," she said, in a dialect that by now had become familiar. Hesitantly, I approached her. She motioned for me to be seated, so I took one of the cushions in the room and moved it close to her so I could see her better. There was not much in the room, only a carpet and a scattering of cushions on the floor. I now noticed the statue of Durga in the corner and a rather large Shiva lingam, which was covered with many fresh flowers, the obvious result of a recent puja or ceremony. I stared at these, surprised to find Durga Ma there. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the woman's half smile, but her eyes remained only partially open. "I see, you know Durga Ma," she said slowly. "Not really," I replied. "Yes, I do," I corrected myself. I could see her more clearly now and could tell that she was older than I had first thought. Strands of gray hair peeked out from her head covering. Her face bore the lines of weather, windswept from the cold mountain air. I started to introduce myself. "My husband and I are staying at a place just at the edge of the forest. We come from Kashi, but have been here for some months now," I said. "I have walked by this place many times, but the door has always been locked. I was surprised to find it open today. I didn't mean to disturb you." She didn't respond. As I sat there, a yearning entered my heart. A yearning for what? I wasn't sure. But it was a newborn desire that seemed to burst forth. I gathered the courage to continue. Since I came to Kashmir, I have felt a presence, and I want to understand it. There's something special about these mountains, something that I turned to face the linga. I was brought up with devotion to Lord Ram. It was easy for me to feel devotion to Rama and Krishna. I married into a Shaivite family, and the linga sits in my home. But I don't understand Lord Shiva. His presence is here in Kashmir. I can feel it, but I don't understand who he is. Shiva, the destroyer. My confusion brought a half smile to her face, and her eyes began to open fully. The one you call the destroyer, yogis call the liberator, she said slowly, a warm light entering her eyes. Liberator. I had not heard that word before to describe him. She was quiet for quite some time. Then she said, he liberates us from all that is false, from the false notion that we are confined to a body, from the false notion that the material universe is separate from him. I looked at her quizzically, hoping that she would explain further. There is none other than the One, whatever form he takes, and in the ultimate sense, he resides without form. Shiva, in his manifest aspects, liberates us from the illusion of separation, that we are separate from him. In truth, we are ever abiding in him, the glorious one, the great liberator, awakening us to our original nature, the undivided source of all. He is the aspiration of the yogis. Shakti enables that liberation. She shakes us free. Shiva and Shakti are one, but they become two in order to perform the work of transformation, of liberation. With those words, her eyes closed again and she fell silent. I waited for her to reappear, but when she didn't, I also closed my eyes and tried to absorb what she had said. Much time passed before she opened her eyes again. It takes man many lives and much suffering to even begin to wish to free himself from material bondage. She spoke as if in a trance. You have had many blessings, not only in this life. Don't waste those blessings. It is no mere coincidence that has brought you here. In your heart is a hidden pain carried over from a previous birth, and even now its shadow remains, but that pain will be the cause of your awakening. The Mother will free you. She is aware of every thought, every feeling that arises. She sees into your deepest part and knows even what you do not know about yourself. Do not doubt her. It was surprised to hear her words. It had been a long time since I felt pain over the events that had transpired earlier in my life. But as she spoke, I became aware of very subtle feelings, a longing, a pain from an unknown cause. It was submerged and barely discernible to my normal waking mind. It was older, of an earlier origin, one that was beyond my ability to identify. What was this pain? She seemed to know my train of thoughts. All suffering stems from the original separation from the divine. Let me clarify the appearance of separation, because indeed there is no real separation. It only seems to be so. Lord Shiva, or Durga, liberates us from this false notion that causes so much suffering. Suffering takes many forms and seems to have many causes, but this is its origin. Suddenly she grew solemn and became silent again. The expression on her face changed, as if she were seeing some tragic event, and my body jerked as if I was absorbing her premonition. Fear entered me. Then she spoke. The Mother will guide you. The path to freedom is fraught with many hurdles that must be overcome. There is no easy way to untangle the knots that bind us, knots of our own creation. In each life, we take but a few steps forward, but most people slip back into unconsciousness, enduring the endless rounds of rebirth and suffering, racing after little bits of happiness when there is so much more to be had. You will not slip back, as so many others do. You will move swiftly now, for the Mother has claimed you as her own. I wondered what her premonition might be, and I wondered what she meant by swiftly. I knew that I was far from any thought of liberation. Desire for it had begun to stir, but the achievement of it, well, that was of a wholly different order, beyond what I could hope for in this life. Her demeanor changed. She fully opened her eyes, coming back to the human world. Human love is gifted for a deeper purpose, she continued. It is to awaken the yearning for the ultimate union. It was not meant to be an end in itself. That only leads to suffering, because it is transient. Seek that which is ever abiding, beyond the changing face of time. Love is the very fabric of creation. You have seen this. Love is here right now. It is our very nature. As she spoke, her eyes glowed like sparks of coal lighting up in the dark. She continued her discourse. Union with your own true nature, the one undivided self, is the purpose of life. It is the union of Shiva and Shakti, the return to unity. That is the true love story of creation, the only goal of life. Much time had passed since I had arrived at the hut, and whatever rays of sunlight had managed to creep in through the small window were now gone. The room had become quite dark. She rose to gather some brambles and wood to light a fire, so that we could see each other more clearly. When the fire was burning, I could see that the distant look in her eyes had been replaced by warmth and kindness, which made me feel comfortable enough to speak openly. I did have a sorrow in my life, I said, but that was long ago. Durga Ma came to me in a dream around that time, but she came in a frightful form. That was the only time I had any experience of her. That is her blessed form, she corrected me. Even the devotee is not aware of how she is working in our soul, freeing us from past ties and from sorrows to come. We cannot judge her actions, but you must know there is only one purpose to her work, to liberate you. There is no other goal. We fell into silence again. I changed the subject and ventured to ask, "How is it that you came to the forest to live?" She smiled and replied, "I lived here for many years with my teacher, and from her I learned many things." "A woman teacher?" I asked in surprise. She nodded. "I would love to meet your teacher." "She is here and not here. Her body has passed away, or so I assume. She wandered off into the peaks many years ago and never returned. Sometimes I think she has been absorbed into Durga Ma." As she spoke, a faraway look came into her eyes as her gaze turned to the statue of Durga. "And you continue to live here alone? Are you not afraid?" She laughed a loud and hearty laugh. "You saw her form. Who can touch me with Durga Ma as my shield? When I am here, I keep up the pujas as directed by my teacher. But I also have become a wanderer. I go off into the mountains for weeks on end in pursuit of her. Along the way, there are holy people to visit." "Sadhus?" I asked. She nodded. "There are a few women hermits in these parts. I stay with them. My teacher was such a one. For many years she did ascetic practices." I was amazed by what I was learning. Mataji was the closest to a woman saint that I knew, but her focus was social service rather than ascetic practices. I didn't think it possible for a woman to live such a secluded and austere life. I looked at the slight woman before me. Who would think her a hermit? She was dressed neatly, her hair combed back in a tight braid beneath her shawl. The image of hermits that I had were of unkept and unruly figures. How I admired her and envied her freedom, freedom from all responsibility, and her courage to travel the forests alone. She laughed again, and as if reading more thoughts, she said, and as if reading my thoughts, I envy you, I said, being able to devote yourself fully to these pursuits. I wish I had your strength and determination. As much as I try to devote myself to meditation, I find myself distracted. I try to feel love for Durga Ma, but I cannot say that I truly do. I wish that I could feel as you do, that I could know her. Even though Durga Ma had become a presence in my life, she was still a distant friend, one whom I approached with diffidence rather than love. Love must be cultivated, she said. It does not come in one lifetime. It takes repeated effort over many lifetimes. She got up to stoke the embers of the failing fire. I wish I had some food to offer you, but as you can see, the house is rather bare. You have fed me plenty, I replied, and you have stirred in me a desire for the Great Mother, a desire that has been there, but which I suppose has not been strong enough. I think I still have fear of her wrathful form. She took my hands in hers and smiled as she looked again into my eyes. There was such tenderness in her face. Be rid of your fear forever. Nothing in this universe can harm you. Then she added, one day you will come to know more intimately the ways of the Mother. We sat together for some time in silence. Then I said, many years ago I nearly died. A sadhu saved me and gave me a small statue of Mother Durga. I sit with her in silence in the mornings, but I never learned how to do any pujas. Can you teach me? I asked. She didn't respond at first. Then she said, it is your love that the Mother seeks. Rituals are only useful if they open the heart to that love. But perhaps the pujas will awaken that love, I responded in a quiet voice. She got up to put more wood on the fire. When the flames began to rise, she mumbled some words with closed eyes. Slowly her voice quieted, and she fell into silence again. Suddenly I became aware of the time. I didn't know how long I had been there, but it seemed like much time had passed. I became fidgety, but she didn't move. I wondered whether to stay or quietly get up and take my leave. Something called me to close my eyes. As I sat there for the first time, my racing mind came to a halt, and my thoughts fled. I fell into total stillness, resting in a waveless sea with no movement at all. There were no more questions, nothing to ask, nothing I needed to know. In this stillness, I found myself calling out to the Mother, silently expressing my desire to know her. Again and again, I called out to her, and to my calls became a mantra, repeating itself without any will of mine. This time she appeared, not with her weapons and fire, but in the beauty of a lotus flower, which began to open, revealing universe upon universe, an unending stream of life unfolding like an infinite array of petals. There was no end to her magnificence. How could I feel fear before this wondrous vision? She was joy itself, all beauty and love. I was overwhelmed by the happiness that filled me, a joy that I could barely contain. I do not know how long we sat, but I was brought back to the world by a gentle tap on my chest. My eyes opened, and I saw the woman beside me sitting undisturbed with closed eyes, her body emitting a soft glow, which seemed to light up the room, replacing the fading embers of the fire. If it was not she who had tapped me, then who was it? In the Mother's kindness she had come again to me, showing me her most bountiful form. But did I deserve it? I had closed my heart to her. I began to sob quietly, But these were not tears of sorrow. I didn't know why I was crying. It was the soft flow of love returning, the awakening presence of the mother. When she heard me, the woman opened her eyes. As she placed her hands over mine, my tears subsided. The mother is entering your heart, she said softly. Let her flow through you. That is all you need to do. I looked into her face. My eyes were glowing with joy, grateful for the blessing she had bestowed on me. We sat there for some time longer, bathed in the mother's presence. That was the experience of Durga. Earlier in her life, she'd had a dream where she saw Durga with all her weapons, and she just had a very painful experience, and this frightened her. So now she came to know the loving side of the mother, and came to understand that that fierce form is not to frighten us, but to free us. So tomorrow I will have to skip a reading as I will be traveling, but Sunday I will return with the next reading of Navratri, turning to the creative force of the mother, Sarasvati. But I will begin an hour later, 11:30 in East Coast time, and I think that's maybe 9 p.m. in India. So I will return on Sunday.